Gunfire cracked across the canyon walls. Smoke billowed through the narrow pass as screams echoed between the rocks. Jack Morgan fired his Colt single-action army from behind an overturned wagon, blood seeping from his left shoulder where a bullet had torn through his flesh. The pain seared like a white-hot branding iron, each heartbeat sending fresh waves of agony through his body. Through the haze, Jack spotted her, a small Navajo girl, no more than 8 years old, crouched behind a boulder. Blood trickled down her face from a gash above her eye. Terrified eyes met his across the chaos. "Damn it all," Jack muttered, checking his ammunition. 3 bullets left. The smart choice was clear. Mount up and ride out before the raiders finished their bloody work. One man couldn't stop this massacre. But as bullets whizzed past his head, splintering wood mere inches from his face, Jack had to ask himself, was one Indian child worth dying for? The Arizona sun beat down mercilessly on Jack Morgan's homestead. At 45, his face was weathered like tanned leather, eyes still sharp as a hawk's despite the crow's feet at their edges. The scar tissue on his left shoulder throbbed like an angry reminder as he worked the fences, a permanent souvenir from that day at Eagle Pass. Jack paused, wiping sweat from his brow, and glanced at the small tin photograph he kept in his shirt pocket. Sarah and little Thomas smiled back at him, frozen in time 10 years ago, before the smallpox took them both in a single merciless week. He tucked the photo away and returned to hammering fence posts with renewed force, as if physical labor could drive away the memories. The distant sound of hoofbeats made Jack freeze. His hand instinctively moved to the Colt single-action army, .45 holstered at his hip, the same weapon that had saved him countless times, its wooden grip worn smooth from years of use, the barrel oiled and maintained with religious dedication. Visitors meant trouble out here, 30 miles from the nearest town. A lone rider appeared on the horizon, silhouetted against the setting sun. As they drew closer, Jack's eyes narrowed. A woman on a half-starved pinto, dust coating her dark clothing. Her long black braids were tied with leather strips, and around her neck hung a small beaded pouch. Navajo, if he wasn't mistaken. Jack positioned himself behind the water trough, one hand resting on his revolver, watching her approach with the patience of a mountain lion. She halted her horse a respectful distance from where Jack stood. Her posture was straight despite obvious exhaustion, her gaze direct and unwavering. "Jack Morgan?" Her voice carried across the yard. Jack didn't answer, merely waited with one hand still resting on his revolver. She dismounted with fluid grace despite her fatigue. Standing before him, she squared her shoulders. "I am Ayasha. I was the child you saved 20 years ago at Eagle Pass. I have come to marry you." Jack's face remained impassive, though his mind reeled at her words. "You've got the wrong man, lady." "I remember your eyes," she said calmly, "and the bullet that tore through your shoulder as you carried me to safety. The scar is still there, isn't it?" "Left shoulder, exit wound larger than entry." Jack's gaze flicked involuntarily to his scarred shoulder. "You killed 2 men to reach me," she continued. "One with a knife, one with your last bullet. Then you took me to an old woman heading north with a wagon train. You told her, 'Keep her safe or answer to me.'" Before Jack could respond, movement on the western ridge caught his eye. The unmistakable glint of sunlight on metal. He grabbed Ayasha's arm and pulled her toward the cabin. "Inside, now," he ordered, voice deadly calm. She moved without question, sensing the danger in his tone. Jack drew his Colt, thumbing back the hammer as he positioned himself behind a stack of firewood. 2 riders appeared minutes later, dust clouds rising behind their approaching horses. Rough men with trail-worn clothes and firearms strapped to their hips. The leader, a tall man with a pockmarked face and cold eyes that had seen too many killings, smiled unpleasantly as they approached. "Afternoon," he called, his Kansas accent thick. "Saw you had company. Thought we'd introduce ourselves." My land's not open for visitors, Jack replied, his finger resting lightly against the trigger guard. We ain't here to see you, the man said, eyes scanning the property. We're looking for a Navajo woman. Heard she might be headed this way. There's good money for her, dead or alive. Haven't seen any Indians, Jack lied. Not for months. The second rider, a squat man with a face like a bulldog, spat tobacco juice into the dust. That her horse, then? He nodded toward the pinto, now drinking from Jack's water trough. That's my new horse, Jack said. Bought it off a passing trader yesterday. You calling me stupid? The pockmarked man snarled, his hand dropping toward his holster. Jack's Colt cleared leather in a blur, aimed center mass. I'm calling you trespassers, and I'm giving you 5 seconds to turn around before I put a hole through you big enough to watch the sunset through. The standoff stretched for 3 long breaths before the pockmarked man forced a laugh. No need for bloodshed. We'll be on our way. He turned his horse. But we'll be back. That woman's worth $500 to some very determined men. After they disappeared from sight, Jack returned to the cabin. Ayasha sat at his rough-hewn table, calm as still water. She'd already found his coffee pot and had a brew going on the stove. Those men, Jack began, setting his revolver on the table. Why are they hunting you? My tribe was forced to relocate again last spring, she answered, pouring the coffee with steady hands. Some of us resisted. She met his eyes directly. I know the location of a sacred cave where tribal gold was hidden from government agents. Gold that would pay for guns to fight the relocation. Jack accepted the coffee, noting how she remembered exactly how he took it, black as sin. That doesn't explain why you came to me. You saved me once, she said simply, when no one else would risk their life for a Navajo child. She paused. And I have nowhere else to go. The men you saw are just the first. Others will come, both for me and for your land. Jack's eyebrows rose. My land. The Arizona-Texas Railroad has been buying or taking every property with water rights in this territory. Your spring is the only reliable water source for 20 miles. She sipped her coffee. You need allies as much as I need protection. Jack studied her for a long moment. You can stay the night, he said finally. We'll figure things out in the morning. Ayasha proved her worth before dawn. Jack awoke to find his torn shirt mended and fresh biscuits on the stove. Outside, she was already tending to his bay gelding with practiced hands, speaking softly in Navajo as she worked a burr from its mane. Your shoulder pains you more than you admit, she observed as Jack winced while lifting a feed sack. Old wounds never fully heal, he replied gruffly. Later that afternoon, she returned from the scrubland with 2 jackrabbits. The snares were poorly set, she said, not unkindly. She showed him a different knot, one that would hold better in the dry climate. Jack watched, reluctantly impressed by her woodland skills. That evening, she prepared a salve from desert plants, applying it to his shoulder. The relief was immediate, the persistent ache dulling under her ministrations. Where'd you learn that? He asked. My grandmother was a healer, she answered, before the soldiers came. She worked in silence for a moment. What became of your family? There are children's toys in the store's chest. Jack stiffened. He nearly told her to mind her business. But something in her calm presence loosened the words he'd kept locked away. Smallpox, 10 years ago. My wife Sarah and our son Thomas, 3 days apart. Ayasha didn't offer empty condolences. She simply nodded and said, Then we have both lost our people. Their conversation was interrupted by approaching hoofbeats. Jack grabbed his rifle, but relaxed slightly when he recognized Harlan Jones, the mayor of Dry Creek, the nearest settlement. Jack, Harlan nodded, dismounting. He cast a curious glance at Ayasha, but didn't comment on her presence. Thought I should ride out, give you fair warning. About what? Jack asked, offering the older man a seat on the porch. Maxwell Blackwood's in town, representing the Arizona-Texas Railroad Company now. Harlan accepted the cup of coffee Ayasha silently offered. He's been asking about water rights, specifically about your spring. Jack's expression hardened. This land is mine. Papers all filed proper with the county. Harlan nodded. I know that, but Blackwood's got half the county officials in his pocket. Word is he's got surveyors already marking a rail line that cuts straight through your property. Let them survey all they want, Jack said. My deed's solid. Just watch yourself, Harlan warned, standing to leave. Blackwood doesn't take no for an answer. Never has. After the mayor left, Jack stared out at the horizon, his thoughts troubled. Looks like we both have men hunting us, he said finally. The difference is, Ayasha replied, you still have the will to fight yours. The trip to Dry Creek 2 days later was necessary but tense. Jack needed supplies, and he wanted to take the measure of this Blackwood character himself. Ayasha insisted on accompanying him, despite his objections. Those men are still looking for me, Jack reminded her. They will look for a lone Navajo woman, she replied. Not one accompanied by a white man into town. The small settlement of Dry Creek consisted of one main street lined with false-fronted buildings, a general store, a bank, 2 saloons, and a handful of other establishments. Heads turned as Jack and Ayasha rode in, whispers following in their wake. While Ayasha gathered supplies in the general store, Jack headed to the Red Mesa Saloon for information. He'd barely ordered a whiskey when a familiar face darkened the doorway. Bill Holden, his former deputy from his marshaling days. Only Bill wasn't smiling and greeting. His hand hovered near his revolver as he approached Jack's table. Jack Morgan, Bill said coldly. Didn't expect to find you still breathing. Jack tensed. He and Bill had parted on bad terms after a dispute over a prisoner, but they'd once been as close as brothers. Bill, been a while. 10 years, Bill agreed, signaling for a whiskey. Heard you were mixed up with Blackwood's railroad scheme. Not by choice, Jack replied cautiously. Bill leaned in, voice dropping. Play along, he whispered. Blackwood's men are watching. Then louder, you always were a stubborn fool, Morgan. Understanding dawned on Jack. Bill was still a lawman at heart, playing a dangerous game. Their staged confrontation was interrupted when 3 men approached, clean clothes and Eastern-cut vests marking them as outsiders. But the revolvers on their hips suggested they weren't mere businessmen. Mr. Morgan? The largest one asked, looming over the table. Jack took a slow sip of his drink. Depends who's asking. Mr. Blackwood would like a word, the man continued, about your property. Mr. Blackwood knows where to find me if he wants to talk, Jack replied. The man's hand came down hard on the table. That wasn't a request, old-timer. In one fluid motion, Jack was on his feet, his fist connected with the man's jaw, sending him staggering backward. The second man lunged, but Jack sidestepped, delivering a sharp elbow to his ribs. The third reached for his gun, but froze when Bill's revolver pressed against his temple. I may not like Morgan, Bill said loudly for the benefit of onlookers, but I like railroad thugs even less. The 3 men backed off, the largest one nursing his bruised jaw. This ain't over, he muttered. Never is, Jack agreed, finishing his whiskey in one swallow. Outside, Bill walked alongside Jack toward the general store, maintaining the appearance of tense conversation. Blackwood's dangerous, Bill murmured. He's burned out 3 homesteaders already. I've been investigating him undercover for the territorial governor. He pressed a folded paper into Jack's hand. Your deed is legitimate. His documents are forgeries. I'll be out to your place tomorrow. Make it look like we're feuding. Jack nodded almost imperceptibly. Having Bill as a secret ally changed everything. As they loaded the supplies onto Jack's wagon, a tall, silver-haired man in an expensive suit approached. Despite being in his 60s, Maxwell Blackwood moved with the confidence of a much younger man. His smile didn't reach his cold eyes. Mr. Morgan, he said smoothly. I've been hoping to make your acquaintance. Can't say the same, Jack replied. Blackwood chuckled as if Jack had made a joke. I'll be direct, Mr. Morgan. The Arizona-Texas Railroad needs your land, specifically access to your spring. The nearest water source otherwise is 15 miles off our planned route. Not for sale, Jack said flatly. Everything has a price, Blackwood countered. I'm prepared to offer 3 times what that dusty patch is worth. Then you don't know its worth, Jack replied. That spring hasn't run dry in 15 years, not even in the worst drought. It's not for sale at any price. Blackwood's pleasant facade slipped slightly. Don't be foolish. Progress is coming whether you like it or not. The railroad will be built. Not through my land, it won't. I fought at Shiloh, Mr. Morgan, Blackwood said, his voice hardening. I've seen more men die than you've met in your lifetime. You don't frighten me. Wasn't trying to, Jack replied, checking the cinch on his horse. Just stating facts. A man's land is his own. As they drove the wagon back toward the homestead, Ayesha remained silent until they were well outside town. That man has the eyes of a killer, she said finally. Yes, Jack agreed, but so do I. That night, Jack was awakened by the smell of smoke and the panicked whinnying of horses. He grabbed his rifle and rushed outside to find the stable ablaze, flames leaping high into the dark sky. Ayesha! He shouted, running toward the burning building. 2 horses were still inside, frantic with fear. She appeared beside him with buckets of water. Together they fought the fire while Jack periodically dashed into the burning stable to free the animals. By dawn, they'd saved the horses and prevented the fire from spreading to the house. But the stable was a charred ruin. As they surveyed the damage, Jack found what he was looking for, an oil-soaked rag and the remnants of a torch. Blackwood's men? Ayesha asked, her face smudged with soot. Or your pursuers, Jack replied. Either way, the message is clear. As promised, Bill arrived the next day, making a show of riding in aggressively for any watchers. Once inside the cabin, he revealed the full extent of Blackwood's operations. He's got Judge Walters in his pocket, Bill explained. Been forging deeds, threatening homesteaders, burning out anyone who won't sell. Why doesn't the law stop him? Ayesha asked. Bill's expression darkened. The law's only as good as the men enforcing it. Half the county officials are taking Blackwood's money. So what's the plan? Jack asked. I've sent telegrams to the territorial governor about Walter's corruption. But until then, Bill looked meaningfully at the firearms mounted on Jack's wall. You need to be ready. That night, after Bill had gone to sleep in the lean-to, Jack sat at the table cleaning his revolver. Ayesha applied a fresh poultice to his burns from the fire, her touch gentle but firm. Why do you continue to protect me? She asked quietly. Jack was silent for a long moment. Same reason I did 20 years ago, I suppose. It's the right thing to do. Those men will return, and Blackwood's men as well. She hesitated. There is a solution. If we were married, your protection would extend to me legally. No one could claim me. Jack's hand stilled on the gun barrel. Marriage isn't something to enter into lightly. I do not suggest it lightly, she replied, but for survival, for both of us. Your claim would be stronger with a family on the land. Jack studied her face in the lamplight. Is that what you want? To be tied to an old lawman on a dusty ranch? I want to live, she answered honestly. And so do you. Together, we improve each other's chances. I had a wife once, Jack said, his voice rough with emotion. I swore I'd never replace her. I am not asking you to replace anyone, Ayesha said gently, only to form an alliance that benefits us both. Jack was silent for a long moment before reaching a decision. All right, for survival's sake. The next day, Harlan returned to perform a simple marriage ceremony with Bill as witness. The vows were brief and practical, spoken in the fading light on the cabin's porch. Afterward, Harlan handed Jack the signed certificate. This makes it official, the mayor said, filed with the county tomorrow. That night, disaster struck. Ayasha collapsed with a high fever. Her wound from the fence mending days earlier had become infected. Jack spent the night bathing her forehead with cool water, changing poultices, and forcing willow bark tea between her cracked lips. "Don't you die on me," he whispered, more prayer than command. "Not you too." By morning her fever had broken, but she was weak. Jack refused to leave her side, even as Blackwood's 48-hour deadline approached. Bill took charge of preparations, reinforcing the cabin and organizing their defense. Jack was startled when two neighbors arrived. Hanson from the next property over, and old Caleb Wright from the South Ridge. Both men had previously avoided him, seemingly afraid of Blackwood's reach. "Heard Blackwood's men were coming," Hanson explained, unloading rifles from his wagon. "Figured you could use some help." "You don't have to risk yourselves for me," Jack said. "Ain't just for you," Caleb replied. "Blackwood's been trying to run us all off. If he gets your water, we're next." Together they fortified the homestead, digging shallow trenches, positioning barrels for cover, setting trip wires connected to shotguns. Jack showed them how to create improvised explosives using blasting powder from his mining days. Ayasha insisted on taking part despite her weakness, positioning herself in the cabin's loft with Jack's Winchester rifle. "I will not hide while others fight for me," she said firmly. Dawn broke with tense silence. Then as the sun crested the eastern ridge, they appeared. Blackwood himself leading at least a dozen armed men on horseback. "Last chance, Morgan," Blackwood called. "Take the money and clear out." "This land is mine," Jack shouted back, "recognized by territorial law and federal statute." "Have it your way," Blackwood replied, raising his hand. The battle erupted with deafening intensity. Jack and Bill fired from behind the water trough, dropping riders with practiced aim. Hanson triggered the first explosive as three men rode over a hidden wire, sending them flying from their saddles. From the cabin loft, Ayasha's rifle cracked methodically. When a flanker nearly caught Jack unaware, her bullet dropped the man just 10 feet behind him. Blackwood's men pressed forward despite their losses, using a wagon for cover as they advanced on the cabin. Bill moved to intercept them, but took a bullet in the leg. Jack dragged him to safety behind the woodpile. "Just like Sutton's Creek," Bill grunted through clenched teeth. "Except we're older and slower," Jack replied, tying a tourniquet around Bill's thigh. The battle reached its climax when Blackwood's men set fire to the corral, using the smoke as cover to approach the cabin. Jack fought his way toward them, exchanging gunfire as he moved from cover to cover. A bullet grazed his cheek, another tore through his coat. Suddenly he found himself face to face with Blackwood, both men's weapons empty after the extended firefight. The older man drew a Bowie knife from his boot. "Your land or your life, Morgan," Blackwood snarled. "Your choice." Jack stood his ground, blood streaming down his face. "This land is mine. My blood and sweat are in it. My family is buried on that hill. No one takes it while I'm breathing." Blackwood lunged, but age had slowed him. Jack sidestepped, drawing his own hunting knife. They circled each other in the dust. "You're a relic, Morgan," Blackwood taunted. "The frontier's dying. Men like you have no place in the New West." "Maybe so," Jack admitted, "but I'm still here." Blackwood attacked again, his knife slicing Jack's forearm. Jack stumbled backward, seemingly defenseless as Blackwood moved in for the kill. At the last moment, Jack's hand found his Colt in the dust where it had fallen. The revolver roared once and Blackwood collapsed, a look of surprise frozen on his face. The remaining gunmen surrendered when Deputy Dawson arrived with a posse from town, drawn by the sound of gunfire. Bill's testimony about Blackwood's corruption convinced the territorial authorities to investigate Judge Walters, who was removed from office within the month. 2 weeks after the battle, Jack and Ayasha stood on the ridge overlooking their homestead. The damaged buildings had been repaired and new saplings planted along the spring creek. "I never thought I'd have this again," Jack said quietly, looking not at the land but at her. Something worth living for. Ayasha took his hand. I never thought I would have a home at all. Together they carved two parallel lines into a large boulder marking the property boundary, a symbol of their new beginning together. As they walked back toward the cabin, the first raindrops of the season began to fall, ending months of drought. Jack looked up at the gathering clouds, feeling the weight of the past 2 decades finally begin to lift from his shoulders. My brother might come looking for me someday, Jack remarked, noticing a wanted poster in town the following week. He's been running from the law for years. Ayasha studied the poster. Then we will face that together too.